Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when Nicolas Cage, Hollywood's most unpredictable star, sits across from Joy Behar on The View, and the conversation turns to one of America's most divisive questions? Is today's news media too biased? It started as a lighthearted interview about his upcoming film, a political thriller inspired by real-world corruption. But when Joy brought up media responsibility, Nicolas's tone shifted. He leaned forward, eyes sharp, and said, "Responsibility? The media stopped being responsible when truth became a business model." The audience gasped. Joy fired back immediately. "So what, you think journalists shouldn't have opinions?" she said, voice rising. "You sound like every conspiracy theorist on the internet." Cage didn't flinch. "No," he said quietly. "I just think the truth shouldn't depend on who's paying for it." The energy in the studio changed. Whoopi tried to cool things down, but the debate only grew more charged. Viewers watching at home couldn't look away. It wasn't just about news bias anymore. It was about who controls the narrative in modern America. By the end of the segment, one thing was clear. This wasn't your typical daytime chat. It was a cultural clash between Hollywood's raw honesty and television's polished spin. This is Nicolas Cage versus Joy Behar, the debate that rocked The View. The cameras rolled, the lights gleamed, and The View's signature theme song faded beneath the chatter of a packed audience. Joy Behar opened with her usual mix of humor and sharpness, gesturing toward her co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes, before turning toward the guest of the day. "Ladies and gentlemen," Joy announced, her grin wide but her eyes watchful, "please welcome one of Hollywood's most fascinating, unpredictable actors, Mr. Nicolas Cage." The crowd erupted in applause as Cage strode onto the stage in his typical Nicolas Cage style: sunglasses, a dark tailored jacket, and a quiet intensity that seemed to hum beneath his calm expression. He gave a half-smile, waved politely, and took his seat at the table. "Welcome to The View, Nicolas," Joy said, leaning forward with that practiced warmth that sometimes carried a bite. "You've had a long career, and your new film, The Truth Broker, looks like another wild ride." Cage nodded. "Thank you. It's about a journalist who risks everything to uncover corruption, only to realize that the system itself profits from keeping people misinformed." The audience murmured approvingly, intrigued. Sunny Hostin jumped in. "That's an interesting idea. As someone who's worked in media, I'd say it's complicated. Journalists work hard, but yes, there's corporate influence. It's not black and white." Cage leaned back slightly, fingers tapping the table. "Exactly. It's not about individual journalists. It's the structure. The incentives are off. We used to report to inform. Now we report to provoke." Joy tilted her head. "Hold on," she said, smiling but with that unmistakable edge. "Are you saying news outlets shouldn't make money? Because, everyone's got bills to pay, even reporters." A ripple of laughter came from the audience. Cage smiled faintly. "Of course they do, Joy. But when the bills are paid by clicks, not credibility, truth becomes entertainment. That's not news. That's theater." Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "Well, you'd know a thing or two about theater," she joked, trying to lighten the mood. The audience laughed again, but the tension didn't leave. Joy crossed her arms. "Look, I've been on TV for decades. I've seen bias on both sides, but people love to blame the media for everything. The truth is, they only call it biased when it doesn't agree with their view." Cage nodded slowly. "That's fair. But bias isn't always about politics. It's about agenda. Every story's framed to make someone feel something, not necessarily to make them think." The tone shifted. The crowd went quieter, sensing something deeper brewing. Sarah Haynes leaned in. "So what do you think the solution is? No opinions on TV? Just headlines?" Cage looked at her, his expression calm but intense. "No, I think we need honesty about what's news and what's entertainment. We blur them so much that people don't even know when they're being sold a narrative." Joy chuckled dryly. "That's a nice soundbite, Nicholas, but come on, news has always had perspective. Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, they weren't robots. They had values. That's what made them trustworthy." Cage's eyes narrowed slightly, but his tone stayed measured. "Right, and their values were about integrity, not ratings. Murrow risked his career to tell the truth about McCarthy. Now, people risk theirs for saying something unpopular." The audience let out a low "ooh," the kind of collective reaction that usually means someone just hit a nerve. Joy shifted in her seat. "You really think it's that bad?" "I think it's worse," Cage said simply. "We've built an industry that feeds outrage. It divides people because division sells. And it's not just politics, it's culture, entertainment, everything. Truth doesn't trend anymore. Anger does." Whoopi nodded slowly. "That's not wrong," she admitted. "We do see it. People want headlines that confirm what they already believe." But however, Joy was not ready to let it go. "But isn't it also true," she countered, "that you benefit from that same outrage? You're sitting here promoting a movie that criticizes the media. Doesn't that make you part of the same system you're condemning?" The crowd gasped softly at the pointed question. Cage didn't blink. "That's the irony, isn't it?" he said. "We all live in the machine, but someone has to say the gears are broken." For a moment, no one spoke. The silence felt heavy, charged with both respect and resistance. Then Sonny broke it gently. "You know, I think this conversation shows why people are so frustrated. Everyone wants truth, but everyone also wants to be right." Cage nodded. "Exactly. And until we care more about truth than being right, bias isn't going anywhere." Joy smirked slightly. "So what, you want us all to turn off our TVs?" He smiled back just as sharp. "Maybe just long enough to remember how to think for ourselves." The audience applauded, half cheering, half stunned. Whoopi raised her hand, signaling a wrap for the segment. "We're going to take a quick break," she said, smiling with a touch of relief. "Clearly, we're just getting started." As the music swelled and the camera panned out, Joy leaned toward Cage, her smile polite but tight. "You're a dangerous man to have at this table," she said under her breath, just loud enough for him to hear. Cage chuckled, sliding his sunglasses back on. "Only when the lights are this bright." The audience erupted again, sensing the heat and the fun of it. What had started as a standard interview was already shaping up to be one of the View's most talked about debates of the year. And everyone watching knew the real fireworks were still to come.
The air on The View was getting thicker by the minute. Joy Behar's tone sharpened, while Nicolas Cage leaned back, his eyes narrowing just enough to signal that he wasn't about to back down. "What I'm saying, Joy," he began, his voice calm but carrying an edge, "is that the media doesn't report anymore. It performs. It doesn't show people what's happening. It tells them how to feel about it." Joy smirked. "Oh, please, Nicholas, that's rich coming from a guy who spent half his life in Hollywood pretending to be other people. You're saying actors are fine, but reporters are the problem." The audience gasped, sensing she'd crossed into personal territory. Cage didn't flinch. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "Acting is storytelling. We make it clear it's fiction. The problem is when journalists start doing the same thing and pretend it's truth." The tension sparked. Sonny Hostin tried to mediate, cutting in. "Let's be fair here. Nicholas, the media has a responsibility to inform, but it also has to keep people's attention. We live in a digital world. Headlines compete for clicks. Isn't that just the reality?" Cage turned toward her. "That's exactly the issue. News shouldn't need to compete for attention. It's supposed to inform. Now it manipulates. And when truth becomes clickbait, everyone loses." The crowd applauded lightly. Joy rolled her eyes and waved a hand. "You talk like you're some kind of media philosopher, but you're ignoring something. People have a choice. Nobody's forcing them to watch. If they don't like CNN, they can watch Fox. If they don't like Fox, they can stream documentaries. Choice is freedom. Cage leaned forward, his voice steady. Freedom without truth isn't freedom, Joy. It's chaos. If every network spins reality in a different direction, what's real anymore? That landed. For a moment, Joy hesitated, but she wasn't about to lose control of her own table. "You're oversimplifying," she shot back. "You sound like those people who think journalists should be robots. Bias isn't always bad, it's human perspective. You want us to turn off emotion? News has to make people care." Cage's response was slow and deliberate. "There's a difference between emotion and agenda. One moves people, the other manipulates them." That drew a mix of applause and murders. The audience was split, some cheering Cage's blunt honesty, others nodding at Joy's defense of the press. Sarah Haynes jumped in, clearly trying to soften things. "Let's just acknowledge that bias exists in all directions, right? Left, right, even entertainment. Nicholas, your movies carry messages too. That's influence." Cage looked at her, nodding slightly. "They do, but people know they're watching fiction. The danger is when journalists use the same tricks, music, framing, outrage, and call it the evening news." Joy folded her arms. "So what? You want a world where reporters sound like robots and nobody ever expresses a point of view?" Cage didn't blink. "I want a world where truth isn't filtered through outrage, where facts don't come with background music." That line drew laughter and applause, even from some of the production crew off stage. Joy's smile froze for a second before she quickly recovered. "Cute line, but the truth is, Nicholas, people like their outrage. Outrage keeps them engaged, and engagement keeps the lights on. You know that better than anyone. Hollywood runs on the same formula." Cage shook his head. "Except when the lights go out, it's just entertainment. When it happens in journalism, it's democracy that goes dark." The words hit like a slow-burning fuse. The studio went silent for a moment. Joy pursed her lips, scanning the crowd before responding. "So what's your solution then? Shut down every network that doesn't agree with you?" Cage smiled faintly. "No, I just want honesty. If you're giving opinion, call it opinion. If you're giving facts, prove them, but stop pretending the two are the same." Sunny leaned in again, intrigued now rather than defensive. "That's fair," she admitted, "but it's not easy. Most people don't want nuance. They want someone to take a side." "Exactly," Cage said, turning toward her. "We've turned news into teams, red versus blue, left versus right. The moment truth becomes tribal, it stops being truth." That earned the loudest applause of the morning. Even Whoopi, who'd mostly stayed quiet so far, gave a small nod of agreement. Joy exhaled sharply, tapping her note cards against the table. "You make it sound like we're the villains here, but we're trying to hold people accountable. Politicians, corporations, even actors who buy dinosaur skulls." The laughter erupted again, some cheering, others booing. The heat was real now. The discussion had gone from polite disagreement to philosophical showdown. And Joy wasn't about to let him walk away with the last word. "You think you're the only one who sees the world clearly? Try sitting in this chair for 20 years and facing angry people every day because you dared to say what you believe." Cage's eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. "Then maybe you know exactly what I mean. Belief is fine, but when belief shapes truth, it stops serving the people. It starts serving itself." The studio went still again. Even Joy didn't have a comeback ready. Off camera, a producer signaled for a commercial break, but it was clear to everyone the storm wasn't over. It was only getting stronger.
When the cameras came back from the break, the tension had only thickened. Joy Behar sat stiff in her chair, lips pressed tight, while Nicolas Cage seemed oddly calm, like a man who'd already seen where this was going. The studio audience, restless from the last segment, leaned forward in anticipation. Joy took a sip of her coffee, then set it down with deliberate precision. "So, Nicholas," she began, voice cooler now, but dripping with condescension. "But you've made your point that the media's corrupt and the truth is dying. But let's be real. Actors like you aren't exactly innocent. Hollywood tells people what to think too, doesn't it?" Cage tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Hollywood entertains. The media controls perception. There's a difference. When I play a role, people know it's a story. When you sit here and call your opinions news, that's manipulation." The audience gasped again, and Joy's jaw visibly tightened. She turned toward the camera, addressing viewers as much as him. "I think the audience at home knows the difference between news and entertainment, Nicholas. We're not brainwashing anyone. You're giving people too little credit." Cage leaned forward slightly, his tone soft but cutting. "I'm giving them too much credit, Joy. I think people want to believe in the truth, but they're being fed emotion instead of evidence, and most don't even realize it." That hit hard. The crowd murmured in agreement, and even Sonny Hostin looked conflicted. Joy laughed, a sharp, defensive sound. "So you're the noble truth-teller now? The guy who once bought a castle and went broke? You're preaching about moral clarity?" There was an audible groan from some of the audience. It felt like a cheap shot, and Cage's eyes darkened, though he didn't raise his voice. "You know, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Attack the man, not the message. That's what the media does every day. You don't challenge the idea, you humiliate the person saying it." For a moment there was silence. Then applause broke out, hesitant but strong. Joy's expression shifted, part irritation, part surprise. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You're very dramatic, Nicholas, but maybe that's why people tune into your movies. They love drama. Maybe that's why they tune into the news, too, because frankly, people like outrage. They need a villain." Cage's response was calm, but his eyes glinted with conviction. "Then maybe it's time the news stopped giving them one." Whoopi Goldberg finally spoke up, her voice steady but curious. "Nicholas, I get what you're saying, but isn't some emotion necessary? If people didn't care, they wouldn't act. We need stories that move us." He nodded respectfully. "Absolutely. But emotion should come from truth, not from how it's packaged. If the goal becomes to stir people instead of inform them, you're not reporting, you're performing." The audience clapped again. Joy wasn't smiling anymore. Her voice rose slightly. "That's easy to say from where you sit. You're not the one being yelled at online for doing your job. The media has to survive too, and outrage keeps the lights on. You think networks can run on idealism alone?" Cage looked directly at her now, eyes sharp but voice calm. "I think once you start trading integrity for ratings, you stop doing journalism. You start doing theater." That line landed like a punch. Joy's expression hardened. "You're being smug, Nicholas, and you're wrong. The media still holds power to speak truth to corruption. Without us, the powerful would run wild." Cage didn't hesitate. "And who holds you accountable when you become the powerful?" The crowd went silent. Even the co-hosts seemed frozen. Joy blinked, caught off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out right away. Cage continued, voice low but deliberate. "The media isn't just biased, it's losing its soul. And if we don't admit that soon, we won't just lose trust, we'll lose truth itself." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some shaking their heads, but everyone felt it. That was the moment everything shifted. The argument had gone beyond politics or headlines. It had become something personal. And as the applause swelled around them, Joy Behar's expression said it all. This wasn't over, not by a long shot.
The air inside the View studio had turned dense, like a storm waiting to break. Joy Behar sat forward in her chair now, her eyes locked on Nicolas Cage with a mix of irritation and disbelief. The other co-hosts had fallen quiet, their glances shifting nervously between them. Even the audience seemed to sense it. The next few seconds would decide everything. Joy finally spoke, her tone sharp and clipped. "You know, Nicholas, for someone who talks about honesty and truth, you sure sound condescending. You're sitting here acting like you've got it all figured out, like you're the last pure man left in a dirty world." Cage didn't flinch. "That's not what I'm saying, Joy. I'm saying the media used to challenge lies, no matter who told them. Now it seems like they choose which lies to tolerate." Joy let out a hard laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, come on, that's rich. You're painting every journalist with the same brush. There are still plenty of reporters risking their lives to expose the truth. What you're doing right now is discrediting all of them." "Joy," Cage said evenly, "I'm not discrediting them. I'm calling out the people who turned news into entertainment. You said it yourself. Outrage keeps the lights on. But outrage also blinds people. Maybe, Joy countered quickly, but it wakes them up too. Sometimes you have to shake people to make them pay attention. You think calm, polite news is going to change the world? Cage's expression darkened slightly. No, but neither will hysteria disguised as journalism. There's a difference between passion and poison. The audience reacted with murmurs and scattered applause. Joy's voice rose a notch. Oh, please, spare me the sermon. You come in here, lecture us about the moral decay of media, then act shocked when someone disagrees. You're in Hollywood, Nicholas. Your industry profits off the same chaos you're condemning. Cage leaned forward, his tone controlled but firm. The difference is we admit it's fiction. You sell it as fact. That line hit like a thunderclap. The crowd gasped. Even Whoopi looked stunned. Joy froze for a moment, then forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You think you're clever, don't you? Cage didn't answer. He just looked at her, quiet but resolute. Joy's frustration finally boiled over. Let me tell you something. The press isn't perfect, it never has been, but it's still one of the few things standing between the people and complete ignorance. Without us, you wouldn't even know what the truth was. Cage's response was calm, but his voice carried. The problem is, too many people only know the truth you choose to show them. That did it. Joy's face flushed. Oh, give me a break. You're acting like some conspiracy nut. We have standards, Nicholas, real ones. The media reports facts. It's the public that twists them. Cage gave a small, sad smile. Then maybe the public learned that habit from watching the professionals. The audience erupted, half cheering, half booing. Joy tried to talk over the noise. You're unbelievable. You're sitting here preaching about honesty, but you're just another celebrity using controversy for attention. That was the final straw. Cage's patience visibly thinned. He stood up from his chair, but his voice stayed low, steady, and cutting. Joy, I didn't come here for attention. I came here because I believe the truth deserves better than this. Better than shouting matches and ego trips. The news used to mean something. Now it's just noise. The studio fell silent. Even Whoopi didn't respond right away. Her expression softened just for a moment, then hardened again. Cage adjusted his jacket and took a breath. You can call it condescending if you want, but I grew up believing journalists were the voice of accountability. Now I see too many of them playing for teams instead of people, and that breaks my heart. With that, he looked toward the audience, nodded politely to Whoopi, and began walking off the stage. Joy called after him, her tone half defiant, half regretful. So that's it? You make your speech and walk away? Cage turned briefly at the edge of the stage. No, Joy. I said what needed to be said. Maybe it's time someone listened instead of argued. Then he walked off set, leaving the room in stunned silence. Whoopi finally turned to the camera, voice gentle but grounded. Well, that was something. Folks at home, you've heard both sides. Maybe it's time we all ask ourselves, are we really hearing the truth or just the loudest voices in the room? The audience applauded softly, the mood more reflective than before. And as the camera zoomed out, Joy sat quietly, eyes fixed on the empty chair where Nicolas Cage had been sitting just moments earlier. It wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a wake-up call.
When the cameras cut to commercial, the energy in the studio didn't fade. It just shifted. The applause had stopped, replaced by a heavy, uneasy quiet. Joy Behar sat still, her eyes fixed on the spot where Nicolas Cage had stood before walking off. The tension that once filled the air now left behind a strange calm, the kind that follows after a storm. Whoopi Goldberg finally leaned forward and spoke softly, breaking the silence. You know, Joy, sometimes these conversations sting because there's truth in them, for both sides. Joy exhaled, forcing a half smile. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, Whoopi. I can't stand when people act like the media's the villain. We're not perfect, but without us, the world would be blind. Sonny Hostin chimed in gently. I think Nicholas wasn't saying journalism is bad. He was saying it's losing its soul. Maybe he's right. Maybe we've all let things get louder than they need to be. The audience murmured softly, listening. Some nodded, others stayed quiet, unsure which side they agreed with. Joy looked down at her note cards, then back at the camera as the red light flicked on again. "All right," she said, her voice more subdued than usual. "We're back. For those just tuning in, things got a little heated. Nicolas Cage had strong opinions about the state of the media, and, well, I had mine." She paused, almost searching for the right words. "Look, I've been doing this for decades. I've seen good reporting, bad reporting, and everything in between. I've also seen how fast people want to call something fake just because they don't like it. Maybe the problem isn't just the media. Maybe it's how quick we all are to stop listening." That line earned a soft ripple of applause. Whoopi nodded. "I think that's fair. News used to give people something to talk about, now it gives them something to fight over." Ana Navarro added, "And maybe that's what Nicolas was trying to say. He wasn't attacking anyone. He was reminding us to be better." Joy crossed her arms, then slowly uncrossed them, her tone easing. "Yeah, maybe I overreacted. He hit a nerve. But he's not wrong about one thing, the noise. We've all turned up the volume so high, sometimes we can't hear the truth over it." A thoughtful hush fell over the studio. For a rare moment, Joy's voice carried not defiance, but sincerity. Whoopi looked at the camera, and so let's throw this one to you, folks at home. Is today's news media too biased, or are we just too divided to recognize balance anymore? Let us know what you think. The audience clapped again, less out of excitement, more out of respect. It was the kind of applause that acknowledged an uncomfortable truth. As the outro music began to play softly, the camera panned to Joy, who leaned closer to her microphone and spoke almost as if she were talking to herself. "You know, I've spent my life defending journalism, but maybe defending it also means being honest about where it's gone wrong. Nicolas was passionate, so was I, but at least we both care about the same thing, the truth." She smiled faintly, almost wistful now. Whoopi grinned beside her. "That's the spirit. Passion's fine as long as it leads somewhere real." The credits started to roll. The audience stood and applauded one last time, as the hosts exchanged quick looks. Joy still reflective, Sunny thoughtful, Whoopi calm as ever. In the control booth, a producer whispered, "That's going viral." And he was right. Within an hour, clips of Nicolas Cage's walk-off and Joy's reflective closing monologue flooded social media. Some viewers praised Cage for standing up for integrity, others defended Joy for protecting the press. But somewhere in the middle, thousands of comments echoed one simple line. Maybe they're both right. By evening, the show's clip had crossed 1 million views. News networks picked up the story, calling it the most honest debate daytime TV has seen in years. And though neither Nicolas nor Joy made a follow-up statement, both had left a mark. A moment of rare authenticity in a world that often prefers sound bites to substance. If you enjoyed this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Is today's news media too biased, or are we just hearing what we want to hear?